Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Khawaja Hammad Akbar and you're watching Global Times Pakistan. European Parliament has adopted a resolution against Pakistan to review the GSP plus status of Pakistan. On the ground of public reaction that was observed in Pakistan in recent weeks, to discuss this happening, this crucial development, I have with me Ms. Daniela Irrera. She's a professor, associate professor from the University of Catania, Italy. How are you, Daniela?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Let's play on. So, Daniela, please kindly educate our audience how you see this development. What is the significance of this development?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to discuss about this issue, which is very sensitive, and I believe it should be very carefully treated and discussed. Let me firstly specify how GSP and GSP Plus work and applies to countries like Pakistan. So the so-called generalized scheme of preferences deals with the responsibility to help vulnerable developing countries on the part of developed countries and organizations coherently with the principles established within the United Nations. And let me also emphasize the fact that as applied by the European Union, the GSP looks extremely advanced and flexible in terms of coverage and benefits. The GSP Plus regime in particular provides special incentives to low-income and vulnerable countries, but which is also strongly related to good governance and human rights. And this is also coherent with the overall security strategy that the EU has developed and tried to apply outside its borders. So according to this overall security strategy, human rights, minority protection, civil liberties are at the core of any policies and external policy. Review is part of this process as well, as review is due for monitoring the implementation of the Convention of Human Rights, good governance, and so on. So on the one hand, review is a legitimate and necessary step, and all countries are aware of that. So all countries which accept to be part of this GSP Plus regime are aware of the fact that there is a monitoring step going on. And obviously, if there is any concern like the one which have been observed in Pakistan, the review process may be activated, but it also requires a very deep and careful investigation. So it cannot be anything like a mechanism without any control. So everything should be deeply and carefully investigated. I also would like to stress the fact that the particular relevance of the role of the European Parliament that you mentioned, because the European Parliament, in its capacity of democratically elected institution, is also representing the people of the European Union. So it has always been sensitive in respect of human rights and exerts monitoring and control function in all external policies. So in this case, the European Parliament has recommended to the Commission and to the external service to explore whether there are conditions for reviewing and, if necessary, for withdrawal. So the Pakistani government is obviously entitled to react and also to try to understand whether this investigation is going on, but it also has the obligation to fulfill all requested duties and guarantee that all aspects of good governance are respected at all levels. Therefore, I would see that as a sort of natural process, of a natural part of an overall process in which very sensitive issues are managed. So I would not emphasize so much the bad side or the more important diplomatic side of the problem, because this is something that can be quite easily discussed and negotiated. That's my view.
Thank you. Thank you, Dara, for giving us a clear picture of GSP plus status. So my next question comes, you're talking about the minorities right in the European Union countries. So there are millions of Muslims live in European countries, if you combine them. So why this issue, the blasphemy issue, is very serious point of concern for them. So why don't European Union take care of their sentiments, and why the European Union is not willing to pass a resolution to support the sentiments and pass a law that they will not breach the self-respect barrier in the shelter of freedom of expression?
Well, once again, these are very, very sensitive aspects of the issues of the issue. There is no doubt that in Europe, right wing as well as populist political parties and movements can be found. And they have often expressed some radical views, and they continue to express radical views. It is also true that given that European Parliament is a democratically elected institution and represents the European people, it is also likely that all political forces represented in the EU members can enter the European Parliament. So it may happen as well that, as you were mentioning, someone who has who can express some such radical views can also enter the European Parliament, and it happened as well in the past. However, I would also like to stress the fact that although we are facing very difficult times and and everything is very unpredictable, how things could develop in the near future is very unpredictable, and the effects of the COVID-19 will necessarily worsen the world in which we are living, because we are going to live in a post-pandemic world, and nobody can predict how it will be. Probably it will be not so good, but anyway, some good things can always be reported. So the fact that being members of the European Union, right or wrong, assured those constraints and guarantees that extremely radical views will never ever affect democracy and basic principles, it cannot happen. So the same applies to other policies, including GSP, in particularly GSP Plus, which, as I told you before, is very much connected to good governance and human rights, and also radicalization, any de-radicalization process. So it would be necessary to discuss. I would rather shift the attention towards the need to focus on how the lack of progress which have been reported and analyzed can be filled, or which are the main cause of such lack of progress. And also it would be very important to firmly and officially condemn any kind of violent attacks and extremism. And once again, this can always happen within the normal review process.
Right, Dana. Thank you for giving this elaborated answer. Now let's come to the point where the credibility of the resolution. Pakistan's Human Rights Minister Sheikh Bazari tweeted, referring to the Wemer, who is a co-author of this resolution, belongs to Sweden and sponsor also. It is unfortunate. Let me quote the tweet. It is unfortunate that the co-sponsor of European Union's anti-Pakistan resolution was a member of a party that the Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven referred to as a neo-fascist single-issue party with Nazi and racist roots. And and moreover she questioned that question now was whether GSP plus is getting muddied in Islamophobia. So how you see the statement and implication of this on resolution?
Well, actually, this statement had a very strong meaning. It was very, very meaningful because, particularly for the use of some words like Islamophobia, is a very clear notion. So it clearly refers to something which it is true that has been found and in some in the past in some European countries, particularly following the terrorist attacks in France or Germany, for example. But still, Islamophobia is a very strong phenomenon. So I think that it is too much just to say that there is a problem of Islamophobia in this resolution, and also that the entire GSP plus regime is getting muddied. It is too much. I think that it cannot be said that because it is actually too much. Once again, I would remind the two main things. So the first one is that it is true that I was mentioning before that there may be right-wing representatives in the European Parliament. So the European Parliament has been quite controversial in the past because you also probably know that the Eurosceptical movements were part of the European Parliament, or also representatives of the Brexit movement. But at the same time, I would remind once again the fact that any radical view, any radical approach is still mitigated. It should be mitigated by the fact that they are these people, as you were mentioning, the Swedish PM, but also any other people who has supported the resolution, they were part of the European Parliament, and the European Parliament is a democratically elected institution. So democracy is always and should be always at the basis of any any resolution and any decision. So it may happen, of course, that some radical views emerge, but at the same time, these radical views in the end are mitigated. And the second thing is that the GSP Plus is a very well-established and well-functioning regime, which has provided to Pakistan and to many other low-income developing countries lots of benefits. It's part of it's a part of the rule of the game. Let's say it's part of the game and of the so-called conditionality to receive several benefits, but also to receive several requests. So the point is that once again, I would focus on the most rational part of the request. So focusing on the lack of progress in limiting the scope and implementation of the death penalty, and also condemning all violent attacks and extremism. And this is what is requested. And this can be part of a normal review process, which once again is a normal part of the process. So saying that the whole GSP system regime is getting muddied in Islamophobia could have very strong implications for the future of such scheme, and also in relation to other Muslim countries. And we know very well that the main aim of the EU external policies at all levels is to have good partners, good relations with neighbors, good relations with partners in the name of security, but also for mutual benefits.
Thank you, Daniela, for giving us your time. Just your concluding remarks on the situation that because the anti-French element and the remarks that President Macron gave a few months back. So they were very hurtful, and the people were very angry on his statement. So, in this all circumstances, do you see the culture of Islamophobia in European Union spreading?
Well, you know that particularly in this period, which is marked by economic crisis, health issues, and everyone is struggling for vaccination, and we see that everything is going very bad in different parts of the world. We see that that states are not very well equipped to manage crisis. On the one hand. On the other, we see a resurgence of, let's say, realpolitik relations. So it's very common to say now that relations among states are marked by competition rather than cooperation. So all these sentiments, all these feelings, all these the use of such words, let's say, these notions which refer to very, very clear and identifiable phenomena, because, you know, Islamophobia is something very quite strong. It's more than a perception. It's a perception which can contribute to shape policies. And this, of course, may have relevant implications. This is one of the consequences of this competition that we see among states. So it is we see lots of competition in the world system in this period rather than cooperation. Or in other words, we can say that cooperation is much more difficult because all states have their own preferences, their own national priorities, and they are less likely to cooperate because national preferences are right now more important. So this may also let's say, affect some forms of cooperation which have worked quite well in the past, like the one we were discussing today. But I will be very cautious in using such radical views to instrumentalize, let's say, such radical views, because once again, this competition can bring to very severe implications in the long term, and also these relations among states can worsen too much. So the anti-French sentiments is something that should be, let's say, mitigated. So instead of perceiving things like a threat, like an attack, I would use more diplomatic efforts to mitigate these bad effects and try to cooperation may be difficult, but try to at least to mitigate the effects of competition.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daniela, for giving us your precious time and sharing your sagacious thoughts. It was very fruitful discussion for me and my audience. Again, thank you. And this is all for audience today. Thank you so much for watching Global Times Pakistan. Keep watching for more updates. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.